The oak doors closed with a sound that felt like judgment. Every head in the boardroom turned. At the far end of the 12-foot table, a woman in a white suit set down her tablet. Calm, precise. Her name was Dana Rivers, though in this room they hadn't cared enough to ask. Who invited her? The voice came sharp, cutting through polished air. Eleanor Wright board chair, 60, silver hair, and louder confidence leaned forward, as if proximity could turn disdain into power. The room chuckled with her, the kind of laughter that hides behind words like protocol and tradition. The cameras above blinked red. Meeting in session. Dana looked up slowly, unbothered. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Dana Rivers. Excuse me? She asked, her tone even, her face unreadable. Eleanor smirked. This is an executive review, not a press visit. Next time, have your assistant check the guest list. The man beside her adjusted his cufflinks. Or maybe she's lost. Happens. More laughter. Dana didn't answer. She simply tapped her screen once. A silent note, a timestamp. The glass tabletop reflected the movement like a warning no one heard. Across from her, the CEO of Belmont Industries, the company trying to merge with Rivers Global for a $5 billion deal, shifted uncomfortably. He knew her. He just hadn't expected her to walk in unannounced. Eleanor folded her arms. Someone get security. No need, Dana said softly. Her voice didn't rise. It settled, heavy, absolute. The air changed. Even the portraits on the paneled walls seemed to listen. You asked who invited me, she said, turning her gaze to the board. I'm just here to see how my partners behave when they think no one's watching. Eleanor's smile faltered. Your partners? Dana's phone vibrated once. A quiet signal. She didn't look at it. She didn't need to. The woman who'd been treated like a mistake was about to show them exactly whose table this was. No one moved. The air in the boardroom thickened, expensive silence filling every inch between mahogany and ego. Eleanor adjusted her pearl brooch, the kind of gesture meant to say, I'm still in charge. Miss Rivers, she began, you may not understand how these meetings work. We're discussing corporate integrity, not community outreach. Dana didn't answer right away. Her hand rested near the edge of her tablet, fingers perfectly still. When she finally spoke, her tone carried the weight of still water, calm but deep enough to drown. Integrity, she said. That's an interesting word to use in a room that hides bias behind spreadsheets. The younger executive, Bennett, tried to smooth the moment with a grin. No offense meant, of course, we just weren't expecting a surprise guest. Dana looked at him, then down at the Rivers Global logo embossed on her folder. Then this is your lucky day. A few people chuckled out of discomfort, not humor. Across the table, the merger lead whispered, She's recording this. Eleanor rolled her eyes. She wouldn't dare. Dana's reply was almost a whisper. You'd be amazed what I dare. A low hum came from the ceiling vent, like the building itself was holding its breath. Outside the boardroom's glass wall, a few assistants slowed their steps, sensing something electric brewing behind the frosted glass. Eleanor stood. This is unprofessional. If you have concerns, take them through your liaison. You can't just walk into a billion-dollar discussion. Dana's gaze stayed on her, steady as marble. You're right, she said softly. I didn't walk in to discuss. I walked in to observe. Her eyes swept the table, the screens glowing with charts and quarterly forecasts. And I've already learned what I needed to know. The younger clerk at the far end, the note-taker, frowned slightly. He'd been quietly logging timestamps since the first insult. Something about this woman, her calm, her precision, made him believe he'd just witnessed a turning point, though he couldn't name why yet. Eleanor mistook the quiet for victory. Then perhaps we can resume with actual stakeholders, she said, taking her seat. Dana leaned forward just enough for her voice to cut through the hush. You might want to define that word carefully. The table shifted with discomfort. Somewhere down the hall, a phone rang sharp, distant like a warning shot. No one in that room knew it yet, but before the end of this meeting, every number on those screens would vanish. Eleanor's nails tapped the table like tiny gavels. We're losing time, she said. Mr. Belmont, continue your presentation. Belmont cleared his throat, eager to move past the tension. The large screen flickered to life, showing projections, graphs, and one bold title. Rivers Global Acquisition Phase 1. Dana's gaze fixed on it. Acquisition? She repeated. The word landed like a cold stone. Belmont hesitated. A term of convenience, he said quickly. We're proposing a strategic merger, of course. Eleanor added, semantics. The numbers speak for themselves. Dana leaned back. They usually do when people stop listening to everything else. The consultant beside Eleanor, a thin man with sharp glasses, muttered, This is why we don't do open meetings. He didn't mean to be heard, but he was. Dana turned her head slowly. Say that again. He froze. I just meant this isn't the format. No, Dana interrupted. You meant this isn't the audience you expected. The line cut the air in two. Someone exhaled too loudly. Another adjusted his chair. Belmont shifted his slides, trying to keep the room from melting under its own arrogance. As you can see, Phase 1 ensures control remains with the existing leadership. Dana tilted her head. Control. Always the favorite word in rooms like this. Her voice was low, almost reflective, but it carried. Eleanor forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. If you're uncomfortable, Miss Rivers, perhaps your team can review these terms later. Dana's smile returned, quiet and lethal. My team will review everything, including the way you just said, my team. The young note-taker paused, his pen hovering mid-air. He felt the shift, that delicate second when power begins to tremble before it breaks. Eleanor waved a hand. Let's stay professional. This isn't personal. Dana met her eyes. Every bias in this room is personal. You just hide it in policy. For the first time, silence didn't feel like control. It felt like exposure. Belmont's assistant, a woman in her 30s, whispered, She knows. Eleanor's head snapped toward her. Knows what? Dana answered for her. About the clause that moves Rivers Global's board seats to your holding company. About the undisclosed partners you never filed. Belmont's face went pale. How did you? Because I built the system you're trying to rig, Dana said. Her tablet lit up with a quiet glow. One line of code shimmered across the screen. She looked around the room, unblinking. And I just watched it log every word you said. The hum in the ceiling deepened. Someone muttered, What is she doing? But it was already too late. The masks were cracking and Dana Rivers was done pretending she didn't see them. No one in the room dared speak first. The only sound was the faint hum of the projector and the ticking of Eleanor's watch, loud now. Like a countdown no one had started, but everyone felt. Belmont tried to smile. Let's not be dramatic, Miss Rivers. We're all professionals here. Dana's gaze didn't waver. Professionalism isn't a shield for deceit. Eleanor straightened in her chair. Enough. You don't have clearance to review internal contracts. Dana folded her hands. Calm. I have clearance for everything that carries my name. And right now, your screen does. The young note-taker at the end of the table swallowed hard, glancing at the glowing slide still titled Rivers Global Acquisition. He typed faster. The recording red light on his tablet blinked quietly, unnoticed but deliberate. Eleanor leaned forward, her tone now sharp with fear disguised as control. You may be a CEO, but this board reports to me. You're a guest in this room. Dana's reply came slow, each word measured. A guest doesn't fund the building, a guest doesn't pay your salaries, and a guest doesn't own the trademark over your name. Belmont blinked. What does that mean? Dana looked at him. It means you've been selling what you don't own. The air seemed to shrink. Everyone's posture tightened, instinctively defensive. Eleanor forced a dry laugh. You're bluffing. Then check your system, Dana said quietly. Belmont reached for his laptop, fingers trembling. He scrolled through the internal ledger. The room fell utterly still. Then came the sound, a soft, mechanical chime when the company dashboard refreshed and displayed Rivers Global Holdings. Primary ownership 90, 2% Dana Rivers. Eleanor's face drained of color. That's impossible. Dana's eyes held hers. You wanted me gone before you knew who I was. That's your first mistake. Assuming you could erase me was your second. The room was a pressure chamber now. The young clerk caught Eleanor's reflection in the glass wall, a woman unraveling under her own arrogance. Belmont closed his laptop slowly, voice barely steady. Miss Rivers, perhaps we can discuss terms privately, Dana interrupted. No, we do this in the same light where the disrespect happened. Eleanor slammed her palm on the table. Security! Now! The doors opened. 2 guards stepped in, confused, waiting for instruction. Dana didn't move. She turned her chair slightly toward them. Gentlemen, before you act, you might want to ask who signs your checks. They froze. The taller one checked his earpiece, listening to a voice only he could hear. Then, without a word, both men stepped back and left. The click of the door behind them sounded final, like the room itself had chosen its side. For a long, stretched heartbeat, no one breathed. The guards' footsteps faded down the hall, and the silence they left behind was heavy enough to bend glass. Eleanor's voice came thin and brittle. "You think intimidation makes you right?" Dana tilted her head. "No. Evidence does." The younger clerk at the far end shifted in his seat. His tablet screen flickered with the red dot of a live document, every word, every insult, every timestamp. He wasn't sure why he was still recording, only that history was happening in front of him. Belmont coughed into his fist. "Let's recalibrate. Emotions are running high. We can revisit these numbers once legal confirms." Dana's tone stayed even, unshaken. "Your legal team already confirmed. 40 minutes ago." Eleanor's eyes snapped toward her. "How would you know that?" Dana looked directly at the camera in the corner of the ceiling. "Because I watched the email go out from your counsel's inbox. You copied me by mistake." A ripple of unease moved through the room, the sound of certainty fracturing. The consultant in glasses whispered, "Jesus," under his breath. Dana caught it. "No," she said softly. "Just accountability." Belmont stood up, voice rising. "You don't understand what's at stake here." Dana rose too, not in anger, but authority. "On the contrary, I understand exactly. You were about to hand over $5 billion worth of assets to a board that mocks diversity while profiting from it." Eleanor slammed her palm down again. "Watch your tone." Dana's reply came like a calm storm. "My tone built the company you're trying to steal." The note-taker blinked that line, he knew, was one for the ages. Across the table, someone muttered, "She's recording us." Dana smiled faintly. "No need. The building is." A low chime echoed through the room, subtle but clear. Lights in the corners of the ceiling blinked blue. The internal audit system had gone live. Belmont's laptop pinged with notifications stacking one after another. Access log retrieved. Compliance alert triggered. Eleanor's voice cracked. "What did you do?" Dana stayed perfectly still, just opened a window, letting the truth breathe. The glass wall behind her reflected the chaos men in suits, shifting, whispering, unraveling. The young clerk whispered under his breath, "She planned this." Dana didn't deny it. "When power lies quietly long enough," she said, turning toward the board, "people mistake it for weakness. I just reminded you what silence sounds like when it decides to speak." No one dared respond. The projector light flickered across her face like a storm coming alive, and for the first time since the meeting began, everyone in that room knew the deal was no longer about money. It was about survival. The projector light trembled on the far wall, its glow spilling over faces that suddenly looked decades older. The board members sat rigid, unsure if they were still running a meeting or sitting trial. Eleanor finally spoke, her voice small, stripped of its authority. "This isn't how business is done." Dana met her eyes. "You're right. This is how accountability is done." Belmont ran a hand over his face. "You can't weaponize ethics, Dana. We've worked too hard on this merger." She cut him off gently. "Then you should have worked harder on respect." The younger clerk looked up from his notes, stunned by the stillness that followed. He'd seen leaders yell, threaten, even beg in that room, but never command silence like this. Eleanor reached for her glass of water, her hand trembling. "You don't understand what your outburst will cost. Investors talk. Reputations crumble." Dana's tone was almost kind. Reputations crumble faster when they're built on arrogance. From the hallway, faint footsteps approached the sound of whispers beyond the glass. Staff outside had stopped pretending not to notice. A few pressed closer to the frosted wall, phones half raised, sensing something historic unfolding inside. Dana looked down the table, scanning each face. "You thought no one would ever challenge you, that I'd stay grateful for a seat you built on prejudice." Belmont tried to interject. "That's not fair." "Fair?" Dana's voice sharpened for the first time. "You labeled me diversity optics in your internal memo. Your assistant sent it to the wrong folder." Belmont froze. He didn't deny it. He couldn't. Eleanor's mask cracked. "You went through our files?" Dana smiled slightly. "I didn't need to. Your carelessness did that for me." The young clerk's fingers hovered over his keyboard. He looked at Eleanor, then at Dana, and whispered to himself, "She's not fighting them. She's dismantling them." One of the consultants, nervous, tried to redirect. "Miss Rivers, We can negotiate, adjust board equity, perhaps offer—" Dana lifted a hand and he stopped mid-sentence. "No. You don't negotiate with people who question your right to be in the room." The lights flickered briefly, like the building itself shuddered with tension. Dana stood again, gathering her folder. "You've built an empire on polished lies. Consider this, the first crack." Belmont whispered, "You'll destroy us." Dana's gaze softened, almost pitying. "No. You destroyed yourselves the moment you mistook civility for compliance." The projector blinked once more and went black. The only light left was the blue audit glow, pulsing steady like a heartbeat. Somewhere in that silence, everyone realized the same truth. The woman they tried to dismiss wasn't making a scene. She was ending one. The projector died, leaving only the boardroom's low amber light. It bathed the table in a strange glow, half confession, half aftermath. No one spoke. No one moved. Eleanor's voice broke first, quiet and trembling. "You've made your point." Dana didn't blink. "Not yet." She opened her folder and slid a single printed sheet across the table. It stopped perfectly in front of Belmont. His hands hovered above it like it might burn. The title read, "Preliminary Findings Internal Audit. Conflict of Interest. Phase 1. Beneath it, names, signatures. His among them. Belmont's throat went dry. "Where did you—" Dana's tone was surgical. "From your compliance department. They sent it to my office this morning." Eleanor shot him a look that could cut steel. "You assured us nothing would leak." Belmont's face reddened. "I didn't leak anything." Dana's calm cut through their panic. "No, but corruption always does." "Oh." The young clerk's pen hovered midair. He looked down at his trembling hand. "Should I keep recording?" He whispered to no one in particular. Dana turned her gaze to him. "Always keep the record straight." Her voice was low, but it carried like a verdict delivered in velvet. Eleanor pushed her chair back, metal scraping over the marble floor. "This meeting is over." Dana didn't move. "Then why are you still here?" Belmont muttered something about calling legal, fumbling for his phone. Dana said softly, "You might want to check the network first." He froze. The phone screen showed no service. The room's Wi-Fi indicator had vanished. Eleanor looked around, bewildered. "What did you do?" "Protocol 7, Dana said simply. "Internal lockdown until audit completion. Standard compliance procedure for corporate misconduct." A murmur rippled through the board members. One of them whispered, "She can't do that." Dana looked at him. "I already did." The atmosphere changed again, subtle but seismic. Authority had shifted. The walls themselves seemed to lean toward her. Eleanor tried one last defense. "You're overstepping, Dana. This is an abuse of power." Dana's reply was a whisper of truth. "No, this is power refusing to be abused." The young clerk's eyes widened. He would remember that line for the rest of his career. Belmont sank back into his chair, sweating through his collar. "You can't shut down a $5 billion merger over pride." Dana leaned forward, her tone almost kind. "This isn't about pride, it's about principle, and that's something money can't buy." Outside the frosted glass, a crowd had gathered assistants, analysts, interns, faces pressed close, watching the empire tremble from within. Eleanor turned toward the door, voice cracking. "Unlock it." Dana stayed seated, eyes calm, hands folded. "It'll unlock when the truth finishes its work." Oh, somewhere deep in the building, a chime sounded soft, steady, inevitable. The audit had begun. The chime echoed through the boardroom like a church bell for arrogance. Blue lights pulsed from the ceiling, slow, deliberate, merciless. Every screen in the room flickered to the same message. Internal audit activated compliance lockdown. Protocol 7. Belmont's jaw dropped. "You can't initiate a full compliance lockdown without board approval." Dana's eyes lifted to meet his. "You're assuming I needed yours." "Oh." The young clerk glanced between them, the glow of his tablet painting his face in cold light. "It's real," he whispered. "The system's running cross-verification, every account, every transaction." Eleanor turned on him, desperate. "Shut it down." He hesitated. "Ma'am, I can't. It's remote, locked from executive clearance level 1. Dana's voice was quiet. "That's me." For a moment, no one spoke. The hum of the air conditioner was suddenly deafening. Eleanor stood up, pacing, every step sharper than the last. "You'll bankrupt this deal. Do you have any idea what investors will think?" Dana answered without raising her voice. "Yes, They'll think integrity still means something. Belmont slammed a fist on the table. Enough of this moral crusade. You're destroying years of work. Dana's tone hardened, but never rose. You built this company on borrowed faces and stolen credit. Don't confuse that with work. He started to argue, but his laptop chimed again. The audit log expanded names, payments, offshore accounts. His own initials flashed red beside undisclosed financial interest. Color drained from his face. The young clerk looked up, pale. "Sir, you should see this." Eleanor snatched the tablet from his hands. When she saw the screen, her voice broke into a whisper. "My God." Dana's gaze softened, not out of pity, but truth. "You thought the system served you. It served the truth. But..." The projector came alive again, unprompted, filling the far wall with a cascading list of flagged violations. Conflict of interest, board misrepresentation, ethics breach level A. Outside the glass, the corridor was no longer just staff. It was half the building employees standing shoulder to shoulder, phones glowing, recording the silent revolution happening inside. Eleanor turned toward the door, voice shaking. "You planned this." Dana rose slowly. "I planned accountability. What you call destruction is just exposure." Belmont tried one last plea. "You can't do this to us." Dana's voice came calm, final. "I'm not doing anything to you. I'm letting your actions speak." The young clerk whispered, awed. "She's not fighting them. She's rewriting the rules." Dana looked toward him and nodded slightly. "Every system needs a reboot." The blue lights steadied. The audit log froze. Then a soft chime announced completion. Phase 1. Confirmed. Eleanor's eyes met Dana's. For the first time, there was no superiority, only fear. And somewhere beyond the glass, the crowd began to clap, quietly at first, then louder. Justice had found its rhythm. The applause outside swelled, muffled by the thick glass but unmistakable. Inside, the boardroom looked less like a meeting and more like a reckoning. Every light reflected off polished wood. Every reflection showing one truth: no one was in control but her. Eleanor gripped the back of her chair. "You'll regret this, Dana. You're burning bridges you'll need tomorrow." Dana stepped closer, voice low. "You can't burn what you built yourself." She tapped her tablet once. The main screen on the wall shifted. A new file opened. Ownership confirmation. Rivers Global Holdings, parent entity. DR Capital Group. At the bottom, a digital signature glowed faintly. Dana Rivers, founder and majority owner. Gasps filled the room. The young clerk's mouth fell open. "She owns the holding company," he whispered. Belmont stumbled back a step, color draining from his face. You never said..." "I didn't need to," Dana said. "You were too busy assuming I didn't belong." Eleanor's lips trembled. "That's not possible. Rivers Global's shares were..." "Purchased quietly," Dana interrupted, her tone crisp. "Through divisions you thought were subsidiaries. You've been working for me for 16 months. The silence that followed felt biblical. Belmont's voice cracked. "You set us up." Dana's eyes never softened. "I gave you rope. You tied the knot." The young clerk's tablet buzzed again, new notifications flooding in. "Ma'am," he stammered, looking up at Dana. "News outlets are picking this up. The internal memo leak, the audit, everything." Outside the glass, the crowd had grown into a sea of faces, phones raised, lights blinking like a constellation of witness. Eleanor pressed her palms to the table. "We can fix this. We can release a joint statement." Dana's calm returned, almost tender. "No statement can fix a culture that thinks respect is optional." She turned toward the main screen again. A new message appeared at the top corner. Phase 2. Transfer of board authority pending authorization. Belmont lunged forward. "Don't you dare..." Dana looked at him. "You still think this is a dare?" She pressed her fingerprint to the tablet. The system beeped once, cold and final. On the main screen, the words appeared, "Transfer complete. Board authority revoked." Belmont sank into his chair, staring at his lifeless laptop. Eleanor simply stood there, eyes glassy, whispering to herself. She planned every second. Dana closed her tablet, her voice a calm exhale. "You asked who invited me." She turned toward the boardroom door, where the crowd stood watching. "I did." The young clerk rose instinctively, as though standing for something sacred. Dana walked past Eleanor, her heels echoing through the heavy silence. "And for the record," she said, pausing by the door, "this isn't revenge." Eleanor's voice barely rose above a whisper. Then what is it? Dana looked back one last time. Correction. The word hung in the air, sharp, clean, irrevocable. The room didn't breathe for several seconds after she spoke. Correction lingered like smoke in the air, a word so simple yet so final that even the walls seemed to absorb it. Outside, the crowd erupted not in chaos, but in quiet awe. Phones recorded the moment as Dana Rivers, the woman they'd just watched be dismissed and disrespected, stepped past the frosted glass like she was walking out of history and into ownership. Behind her, Eleanor slumped into her chair, hands shaking. "What have we done?" she whispered. Belmont's voice cracked beside her. "We underestimated her." The young clerk, still standing, said nothing. He was watching Dana's reflection in the glass door, composed, unhurried, almost merciful. Inside, the audit screen updated once more. Phase 3 sanctions enforcement pending. A progress bar crawled across the wall, blue light spilling over their pale faces. Eleanor stood abruptly. "We can't let this happen. We'll appeal to the Board of Investors." The clerk shook his head. "You can't. They're under her parent company now." Belmont stared down at the table, voice hollow. "She built a system within hours." The clerk answered softly. "No. She built the real one. You just rented space inside it." Eleanor's fury curdled into panic. "She'll ruin us." From somewhere in the corner, the consultant with glasses spoke, his voice low, resigned. "She already has. You just haven't read the balance sheet yet." Dana's voice came through the intercom unexpectedly, steady, distant, but unmistakable. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. This meeting is officially adjourned. Security will escort you out once your access is revoked." Eleanor spun toward the ceiling speaker. "You can't do this!" Dana's tone softened. "Eleanor, I'm not doing anything. The system is." As if on cue, every badge on the table blinked red. One by one, their devices logged out. Their names vanished from the digital directory projected on the wall. Access denied. Belmont sank back, head in his hands. $5 billion. Gone. The clerk's voice, small but firm. $5 billion or 5 minutes of dignity, it was always her choice. Eleanor's composure fractured. "We gave her a chance." The clerk corrected her quietly. "You gave her permission. She never needed it." Through the glass, Dana paused just long enough to look back. The crowd parted instinctively, the way people make room for storms and saints alike. Eleanor's voice was barely audible. "You'll regret this, Dana." Dana smiled faintly. "I already did. Once. That's why I built something no one could take from me again." Then she turned, walking down the corridor as the boardroom doors sealed behind her with a soft mechanical hiss. The building's lights dimmed to audit mode. Blue, cold, absolute. Inside, the empire they thought they owned finally understood. It had never been theirs. The sound of the door locking was soft, almost polite, but to everyone inside it felt like a verdict. The boardroom that once decided the fate of others now waited for its own. Eleanor stood, pacing in small circles like an animal that had finally realized the cage was invisible all along. "We can call the regulators," she muttered, half to herself, half to the room. Belmont didn't look up. "You don't understand. She is the regulator now." "Huh?" The projector flickered again, casting light across their faces. One by one, employee files appeared on the screen. Unauthorized bonuses, insider deals, diversity report manipulation. Each name came with a red mark termination initiated. The young clerk watched in disbelief. "She's not just removing people," he said quietly. "She's rewriting the hierarchy." No one responded. Eleanor's breathing grew uneven. "We can't just sit here while everything collapses." Belmont looked at her, defeated. "That's exactly what we're going to do, because there's nowhere left to climb." Outside the glass, staff were gathered in hushed reverence. The hallway lights had dimmed to a deep blue, the color of audit mode, but it felt almost ceremonial. The empire was dissolving, and its audience was watching with the kind of silence reserved for history. The intercom clicked again, Dana's voice echoing softly. "Effective immediately, the previous board's access, privileges, and decision-making authority are revoked. Security protocols will ensure compliance." Her voice carried no anger, no triumph, just clarity. "Your exit packages will be reviewed by HR under the Ethics Committee, now chaired by Mr. Lyle, the clerk currently in attendance." Every head turned toward the young man at the end of the table, his face flushed, eyes wide. "Me?" Dana's tone was almost kind. Integrity deserves a seat, too. The call ended. For a moment, he didn't move. Then, slowly, Lyle stood. The others watched, a strange mix of resentment and disbelief written across their faces. He didn't say anything, there was nothing to say. His expression alone told the story. The old order was gone. Eleanor sank into her chair, staring at her reflection in the darkened glass wall. "All these years," she whispered. "And it ends like this?" Belmont gave a hollow laugh. "No, Eleanor. It started like this. We just didn't notice." Lyle looked toward the door, the faint outline of Dana's silhouette fading down the corridor, and said softly, "She noticed." The security lights above blinked once more. The projector shut off. The table lights dimmed. No yelling, no chaos, no final defense, just the quiet, efficient sound of systems closing one account, one reputation, one illusion at a time. The mighty had fallen, not with noise, but with a keystroke. And for the first time in that room's history, silence finally meant truth. The hallway outside the boardroom was quiet now. The applause had faded into murmurs, then into awe. The glass walls glowed faintly blue, reflecting a woman walking through her own building, not hurried, not proud, just certain. Dana Rivers moved like someone who had already forgiven the past. Each step echoed against the marble, steady as a metronome for justice. The staff who'd gathered parted instinctively, their faces a mix of admiration and relief. No one spoke. They didn't need to. The silence honored what she'd done more than words ever could. She stopped at the end of the hall, turning to the window that overlooked the city's steel, glass, ambition stacked sky high. Her reflection stared back. The same calm eyes that had once been ignored in rooms just like the one she'd left behind. 16 years earlier, she'd been escorted out of a meeting for not looking executive enough. She remembered the feel of that day humiliation disguised as professionalism, the smirk of men who thought they were granting permission. That memory used to sting. Now it was just context. Her assistant approached quietly, holding a tablet. "Phase 3 complete," she said. "All terminations processed. Systems clean." Dana nodded. "Good. Issue the public statement." The assistant hesitated. "Would you like to review it first?" Dana smiled faintly. "No. I already wrote it years ago." The assistant pressed send. Somewhere deep in the building, screens flickered to life, every monitor, every internal display showing the same line of text. "Accountability isn't revenge. It's respect, overdue. Dana Rivers." Back in the boardroom, the old executives read it in silence, faces lit by the glow of the words that ended their reign. Downstairs, janitors, receptionists, and interns paused to watch. A few clapped quietly. Some just nodded. For them, it wasn't spectacle, it was balance restored. Dana turned from the window and began walking again. Her heels clicked like punctuation marks in a sentence the world had ignored for too long. In the elevator, she stood alone. The doors closed with a soft hum, and the mirrored walls caught her reflection one last time. Power didn't look loud on her. It looked inevitable. As the elevator descended, she exhaled not from exhaustion, but release. The kind that comes when you no longer need to prove what's already true. When the doors opened at the lobby, a reporter waiting by the entrance tried to ask the first question. Dana raised a hand gently. "No statements today," she said. "Just results." She walked out into the sunlight. The city moved around her, indifferent, busy, alive. But somewhere behind its noise, something had changed. A door had closed upstairs, and in its echo was a new sound. The quiet rhythm of dignity, finally heard.